Jake Morrison walked through the busy halls of Kepler Station. The young human diplomat carried a data pad with trade agreements that needed review. Around him, aliens from dozens of species moved about their business. Some were tall and thin like the blue-skinned Altarians. Others were short and round like the furry Bektar merchants. Jake had worked at Kepler Station for 2 years now. His job was to help humans and aliens understand each other better. Most days he enjoyed the work. Today felt different, though. The Zephyrian Collective had arrived that morning, and their ships filled the docking bays. Commander Lisa Rodriguez met Jake at the main conference room. She was his boss and had taught him everything he knew about dealing with alien cultures. Lisa had gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Ready for this meeting?" she asked Jake. "As ready as I can be," Jake replied. He had read all the files on the Zephyrians. They looked like giant insects with hard shells covering their bodies. Their society was built on strict rules about who was better than who. They believed strength was the only thing that mattered. The conference room doors opened with a soft hiss. 5 Zephyrians entered, their clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. Each one was over 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and glossy black shells. Their leader wore golden markings that showed his high rank. "I am Hive Commander Zaktich," the leader said. His voice sounded like gravel grinding together. "We come to discuss mining rights in the Tau sector." Lisa stood and bowed slightly. "Welcome to Kepler Station. I am Commander Rodriguez, and this is Lieutenant Morrison, our cultural specialist." Jake nodded politely. The Zephyrian leader looked at him with compound eyes that showed nothing but cold calculation. The other Zephyrians arranged themselves behind their commander in perfect formation. "Let's begin," Zaktich said. "The Collective requires access to the mineral-rich worlds in the Tau sector. Your human colonies will relocate to make room for our operations." Lisa kept her face calm, but Jake saw her hands tighten slightly. "That's quite a request, Hive Commander. Those worlds have human settlements that have been there for 30 years. Perhaps we can discuss shared mining operations instead." The Zephyrians' antenna twitched with irritation. "Humans are weak. Your soft bodies and emotional thinking make you unsuited for serious mining work. We offer to purchase the worlds at fair price." Jake looked at the data pad showing their offer. The numbers were insulting. They wanted to pay less than 10% of what the colonies were worth. Worse, they wanted humans to pay for their own relocation costs. "This offer needs work," Jake said carefully. "The compensation is far below market value, and asking the colonists to pay their own moving expenses seems unreasonable." Silence filled the room. The other Zephyrians moved closer to their leader, forming a tight circle. Zaktich's 4 eyes focused on Jake with laser intensity. "You question the Collective's generosity?" Zaktich asked. "I'm suggesting we negotiate terms that work for everyone," Jake replied. He kept his voice steady and professional. "These families have built their lives on those worlds. They deserve fair treatment." The Zephyrian leadership began to change color, shifting from black to deep red. Lisa recognized this as a sign of extreme anger and started to speak, but Zaktich moved faster than anyone expected. His razor-sharp appendage swept across Jake's face with lightning speed. 3 deep cuts opened from Jake's left temple to his jaw. Blood flowed freely as Jake stumbled backward, his hand going to his wounded face. "Humans are insects beneath our notice," Zaktich declared. "You will accept our terms or face the consequences of your insolence." The conference room fell completely silent. Even the soft hum of the station's air recyclers seemed loud. Lisa rushed to Jake's side while the other humans in the room stared in shock. The Zephyrian stood motionless, showing no emotion about what had just happened. Jake straightened up slowly. Blood still dripped from his wounds, but his eyes were clear and focused. He looked directly at Hive Commander Zaktich without flinching. "You shouldn't have done that," Jake said quietly. Something in his voice made everyone in the room feel cold. It wasn't anger or fear. It was the calm certainty of someone who knew exactly what was going to happen next. Lisa activated her communicator with shaking hands. "Medical team to conference room 7 immediately. We have injuries." The Zephyrian leader laughed, a harsh sound like metal scraping metal. "Your weakness disgusts us. Accept our terms or we will take what we want by force." "This meeting is over," Lisa said firmly. "Security will escort you back to your ships." As the Zephyrians filed out, their leader paused at the door. "You have one standard day to reconsider. Humans, do not test our patients further." The medical team arrived within minutes. Dr. Helen Carter examined Jake's wounds while Lisa watched with growing concern. The cuts were deep and would leave permanent scars. "It could have been worse," Dr. Carter said as she worked. "A few inches lower and he would have lost an eye." Jake sat still during the treatment, his face showing no pain. But Lisa knew him well enough to see the change. Something fundamental had shifted in the young diplomat's eyes. The optimistic peacemaker who had walked into that room was gone. "Jake, are you okay?" Lisa asked. "I'm fine," Jake replied, but his voice had that same cold certainty it had held when he spoke to the Zephyrian leader. News of the attack spread through the station within hours. The security cameras had recorded everything, and the footage was already being transmitted to Earth and every human colony. Other alien species watched the recordings with interest, most agreeing that humans had overreacted to simple discipline. The Altarian ambassador released a statement calling for calm. The Vectari suggested that humans needed to learn proper respect for stronger species. The Merloth offered to mediate, but nobody seemed worried about human reaction. They had no idea what was coming. Later that night, Jake stood in his quarters looking out at the stars. His face was bandaged, but his mind was clear. He had spent 2 years trying to build bridges between humans and aliens. He had believed that understanding and respect could solve any problem. Now he understood something else. Respect wasn't given freely in this galaxy. It had to be earned. And some lessons could only be taught through strength. Jake activated his personal communicator and sent a message to Earth. It was short and simple, but it would reach every human world within days. They drew first blood. Now they'll learn why that was a mistake. The message was encrypted and marked with the highest priority codes. By morning, it would be in the hands of people who would know exactly what to do with it. The Zephyrians thought they had disciplined a weak human. Instead, they had awakened something that would change the galaxy forever. The message from Kepler Station reached Earth in less than 18 hours. President Maria Santos was eating breakfast when her security chief burst into her private dining room. His face was pale, and his hands shook as he handed her the data pad. "Madam President, you need to see this immediately." Maria watched the security footage 3 times before speaking. Each viewing made her angrier. When she finally looked up, her eyes were hard as steel. "Get me Admiral Brooks. Get me the Defense Council. Get me every department head in the government. I want them all in the Situation Room in 1 hour." The news spread through human space faster than light travel itself. On Mars, factory workers stopped their shifts to watch the footage. On the mining colonies of Alpha Centauri, families gathered around their screens in silence. On the farming worlds of the Outer Rim, children asked their parents why the bad aliens hurt the nice human man. Admiral Kevin Brooks arrived at the Pentagon still wearing his exercise clothes. He had been running when the emergency call came. Now he stood in the Situation Room with 20 other military leaders, all watching the attack on Jake Morrison for the first time. "How many ships do we have in active service?" President Santos asked. "For 112 combat vessels," Admiral Brooks replied. "But, Madam President, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, I'm thinking that Insect just declared war on the human race," Maria said coldly. "How fast can we mobilize our full fleet? Give me 6 months, and I can have 800 ships ready for combat," Brooks answered. "But the aliens have thousands of vessels. The Zephyrians alone have a fleet twice our size. Then we better be smarter than they are," Maria said. "What about our other assets?" General Patricia Wong stepped forward. She ran the Military Intelligence Division that most people didn't know existed. "We have advantages they don't know about, Madam President. For the past 50 years, we've been watching and learning. Every trade mission, every diplomatic contact, every alien who ever visited human space. We know their weaknesses." On the other side of the galaxy, the Zephyrian Collective was celebrating. Hive Commander Zakdich had returned to the home world as a hero. The High Council praised him for putting the inferior humans in their proper place. The humans will submit within days, Zach DH told the assembled commanders. Their soft hearts cannot stomach real conflict. They will beg us for forgiveness and accept any terms we offer. The other alien species watch humanity's reaction with amusement. The Vectari crystalline beings found human emotion entertaining. Their ambassador, Crystal Singer Velmoth, released a statement saying humans needed to learn civilized behavior. Perhaps this painful lesson will teach them proper respect for their superiors, the crystal being announced. The collective showed remarkable restraint in only marking the insolent one. The Merloth aquatic species offered to mediate the dispute. Their leader, current rider Belaneus, sent diplomatic messages to both sides calling for calm discussion. Violence solves nothing, the aquatic being declared. Both species should return to peaceful negotiation before this incident grows out of control. But something strange was happening in human space that the aliens couldn't see. Every human military base received the same orders. Prepare for immediate deployment. Shipyards that built cargo vessels started installing weapon systems. Scientists emerged from research labs carrying projects that had been theoretical until now. Captain Ryan Mitchell commanded the exploration ship UHS Discovery. He was studying ocean life on a water world when the recall order came. His crew of 30 scientists and diplomats looked confused as they prepared for immediate departure. "Captain, what's happening?" asked Dr. Amy Chun, the ship's xenobiologist. She had spent 5 years studying alien cultures and considered many aliens her friends. "We're going home, Amy," Ryan said quietly. "All of us. Every human ship in the galaxy. But why? What about our research? What about the treaty negotiations with the Feklar?" Ryan showed her the security footage from Kepler Station. Amy watched in horror as Jake Morrison was attacked for simply doing his job. When it ended, she sat in silence for several minutes. "They have no idea what they've done," Amy whispered. "No," Ryan agreed. "They don't." Dr. Amy had worked with aliens for years. She understood how they thought and what they valued. Most alien species saw humans as weak because humans cried when sad and helped their enemies when they were defeated. What the aliens didn't understand was that humans could be both kind and absolutely deadly. She sent warning messages to every alien friend she had made over the years. Most ignored her warnings. A few laughed at the idea that humans could be dangerous. Only one responded with concern. Elder Wise Kurt Mordain of the Merloth sent back a private message. "Young human friend, your people's waters run deeper than most realize. I fear this storm will drown more than the ones who started it." Back on Earth, the transformation was incredible to watch. Recruitment centers had lines around the block. Every retired military officer received a call asking if they wanted to return to service. Defense contractors worked around the clock to fill orders that seemed impossible to complete. But the most important changes were happening in secret. Projects that had been hidden in black budget facilities for decades were suddenly given unlimited resources. Scientists who had been working on theoretical weapons were told to make them real as fast as possible. In a facility buried deep under the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Jennifer Walsh looked at the prototype she had been developing for 15 years. It was designed to interfere with alien communication systems. She had never expected to actually use it. "How soon can you have 100 of these ready?" the general asked her. 6 months if we're lucky," she replied. "You have 6 weeks," he said. "Whatever you need, just ask." Similar conversations were happening in secret bases around the world. The sleeping giant of human innovation was waking up, and it was hungry for revenge. The Zephyrians expected humans to send angry messages or maybe impose trade sanctions. They had no idea that humanity was preparing for a total war. More importantly, they didn't know that humans had been preparing for this possibility for 50 years. Every alien species that had ever made contact with humanity had been studied, analyzed, and cataloged. Their military tactics, their technology, their psychology, their weaknesses, all of it was filed away in human databases, waiting for the day it might be needed. That day had come. President Santos addressed the nation 3 days after the attack. She stood behind the presidential podium with the flags of Earth and all the human colonies behind her. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "My fellow humans, We have always sought peace with our galactic neighbors. We have offered friendship, trade, and cooperation to every species we have encountered. Yesterday, that friendship was answered with violence against one of our diplomats for the crime of asking for fair treatment. She paused, letting her words sink in. The Zephyrian Collective believes they can attack humans without consequences. They believe we are weak and will submit to their demands. They are about to learn how wrong they are. The speech lasted only 5 minutes, but was heard on every human world. By the time it ended, humanity was no longer a peaceful species trying to get along in the galaxy. Humanity was at war, and the galaxy had no idea what that really meant. 3 months after Jake Morrison was attacked, the Zephyrian Collective grew tired of waiting. Hive Commander Zach DH expected humans to beg for forgiveness by now. Instead, human colonies had gone silent. Human ships had vanished from trade routes. Even human diplomats had stopped answering messages. The insects are hiding in their holes, Zach TH told the High Council. We will drag them out and teach them proper respect. The collective mobilized 200 warships, the largest fleet they had ever assembled. Their plan was simple: attack human colonies until the humans surrendered. They expected easy victories against the weak, emotional creatures. Admiral Kevin Brooks watched the Zephyrian fleet movements from his command ship, the UHS Retribution. His fleet was smaller than the enemy's, but it was positioned exactly where he wanted it to be. The aliens thought they were hunting humans. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. All ships implement Ghost Protocol, Brooks ordered. Let them think they're winning. Human ships began retreating from every system the Zephyrians approached. Colonies appeared to be defenseless, with only minimal security forces visible. The aliens interpreted this as proof of human cowardice. The first Zephyrian attack came at the human colony of New Boston. The planet had 50,000 settlers who grew food for nearby systems. It looked like an easy target with only 2 small patrol ships defending it. Hive Commander Zakis led the attack personally with 20 of his best warships. The human patrol boats fled as soon as his fleet appeared. The colonists sent panic messages begging for mercy. Land troops and begin occupation, Zakich ordered. Show these humans a price to define the collective. But as soon as the Zephyrian transport ships entered the atmosphere, everything changed. The fleeing patrol boats returned with reinforcements that appeared out of nowhere. Weapon systems that had been hidden underground came online. The panicked colonists turned out to be soldiers in disguise. Colonel Danny Harper had been planning this ambush for 2 months. His Special Forces team had studied Zephyrian tactics and psychology until they knew exactly how the aliens would react. The insects were predictable because their society taught them never to question orders or adapt to new situations. Execute WASP protocol, Danny ordered. Hidden human ships emerged from asteroid fields and gas clouds around the system. They didn't attack the main Zephyrian fleet directly. Instead, they targeted supply ships, communication relays, and command vessels. Within minutes, the organized Zephyrian attack became chaos. The aliens had never faced an enemy that used deception and misdirection as primary weapons. Their rigid military thinking couldn't adapt fast enough to counter human creativity. Lieutenant Commander Sophie Blake led the Cyber Warfare Division aboard the UHS Fandom. Her job was to turn the aliens' own technology against them. She had spent years studying Zephyrian communication systems, looking for weaknesses. Beginning electronic assault, Sophie reported. Target their command frequencies first. Her team launched viruses that infiltrated Zephyrian computer networks. The aliens found their own ships receiving contradictory orders. Some were told to advance, while others were ordered to retreat. Their strict obedience to hierarchy became a fatal weakness as units attacked each other in confusion. Hive Commander Zach DH tried to regain control of his forces, but human jammers blocked most of his communications. The few messages it got to were often false orders planted by Sophie's team. This is impossible. Zach TH screamed at his communications officer. How can insects manipulate our sacred protocols? But the worst was yet to come. Captain Tony Rivera commanded a deep space reconnaissance ship that had been studying alien technology for years. His team knew exactly which systems were most vulnerable to sabotage. Deploy the nanoprobes, Tony ordered. target their life support and artificial gravity systems. Microscopic human machines infiltrated Zephyrian ships through their air vents and waste disposal systems. The nanoprobes didn't cause immediate damage. Instead, they made tiny changes to critical systems that would cause failures hours or days later. The psychological effect was devastating. Zephyrian warriors who had never known fear began to panic as their own ships became unreliable. They couldn't trust their equipment, their communications, or even their orders. Other alien species watched the battle with growing concern. The Vectari crystal beings had expected the humans to be crushed quickly. Instead, they saw the mighty Zephyrian fleet falling apart without taking significant damage. How are they doing this? Crystal Singer Velmoth demanded of his military advisors. The humans have fewer ships and weaker technology. They fight without honor, replied War Resonance Kektar. They use tricks and deception instead of direct combat. But the Vectari were wrong about human technology. While alien species had focused on making bigger and more powerful weapons, humans had developed systems that were more flexible and adaptable. Human ships could reconfigure their systems in real time to counter new threats. The Merlot aquatic species tried to call for peace talks, but both sides ignored them. Current Rider Belanaea sent increasingly desperate messages to the Galactic Council. This conflict will spread beyond both species, the aquatic being warned. Already, trade routes are disrupted and neutral worlds are choosing sides. We must act before the entire galaxy is at war. But it was too late for peaceful solutions. The Zephyrians had committed themselves to destroying humanity, and humans were determined to prove that attacking them was a fatal mistake. The turning point came during the Battle of Kepler Station itself. The Zephyrians returned to where it all started, planning to destroy the station as a symbol of human weakness. Hive Commander Zach DH wanted to finish what he started when he attacked Jake Morrison. Jake was there waiting for him. The young diplomat had healed from his wounds, but the scars on his face would never fade. He stood in the same conference room where he had been attacked, but now he wore the uniform of a military intelligence officer. "You came back," Jake said calmly as Zephyrian troops stormed into the station. "We came to finish teaching you proper respect," Zach DH replied, his razor-sharp appendages gleaming in the light. "No," Jake corrected him. "You came here to die." The battle for Kepler Station lasted 6 hours. The Zephyrians thought they were attacking a defenseless civilian target. Instead, they found themselves facing the most advanced human military technology ever deployed in combat. Colonel Rachel Scott led the defense with tactics that seemed to border on precognition. She anticipated every Zephyrian move because human intelligence had mapped their entire decision-making process. The aliens were brave, but their predictability made them vulnerable. When the battle ended, half of the Zephyrian fleet was destroyed or disabled. The survivors limped back to their home worlds with reports that should have been impossible. Humans had defeated them using strategy, technology, and psychological warfare that the aliens couldn't understand. But the most terrifying part for the Zephyrians was Jake Morrison himself. The scared young diplomat was gone, replaced by someone who radiated cold competence. He had learned to channel human emotion into precise, calculated action. "Your people made one mistake," Jake told the captured Hive Commander Zach H. "You thought kindness was weakness. Now you'll learn the difference." The news of the Zephyrian defeat shocked the galaxy. The insects had been considered one of the strongest military powers. If humans could defeat them, what did that mean for everyone else? Other species began to reconsider their positions. Maybe humans weren't the weak, emotional creatures they appeared to be. Maybe there was something dangerous hiding behind all that kindness and diplomacy. The war was just beginning, but already the balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. Humanity had been underestimated for the last time, and now the galaxy would learn why that had been such a costly mistake. The defeat at Kepler Station sent shockwaves through alien space. The Zephyrian Collective had lost over half their fleet to what they considered an inferior species. Worse, the surviving commanders brought backstories that made no sense to their leaders. "Humans fight without honor," reported Subcommander Vectran, one of the few officers to escape the battle. "They turn our own strengths against us. They make us fight shadows and illusions." The High Council of the Collective refused to believe the reports. How could insects defeat their mighty warriors? They decided that humans must have received help from other alien species. Contact our allies, or its supreme hive leader Zarmoth. The Vectari crystal beings have advanced technology. They will help us crush these upstart mammals. The Vectari crystalline species had watched the conflict with interest. Their society was built on the belief that technological superiority guaranteed victory. They agreed to help the Zephyrians, thinking it would be a simple matter of overwhelming human forces with advanced weapons. Crystal Singer Velmoth assembled a fleet of 100 ships equipped with harmonic disruptors that could shatter any known material. Their crystalline hulls were nearly indestructible, and their energy weapons could cut through solid rock. We will show the mammals what real power looks like, Velmoth declared. Their crude metals cannot stand against pure crystal perfection. But the Vectari had made the same mistake as the Zephyrians. They underestimated human adaptability and creativity. While they prepared their overwhelming assault, humans were studying captured Vectari technology and finding unexpected weaknesses. Captain Rachel Scott had been promoted to general after her defense of Kepler Station. Now she commanded the human forces preparing to face the crystal aliens. Her science team had discovered something interesting about Vectari ships. Their crystal hulls are incredibly strong, reported Dr. Marcus Webb, the fleet's chief scientist. But they have a resonance frequency that makes them vulnerable to specific sound waves. Can we weaponize that? Rachel asked. We've already started. Marcus smiled. If we can get close enough to their ships, we can make their own hulls vibrate themselves apart. The plan required human ships to get within point-blank range of alien vessels that could destroy them in seconds. It was incredibly dangerous, but it was also the kind of desperate gamble that aliens never expected humans to attempt. Meanwhile, the war was spreading beyond military targets. Human economic specialists had discovered that the galaxy's trade systems were more fragile than anyone realized. Every commercial transaction humans had ever been part of became potential leverage. Dr. Patricia Wong ran the operation from a secret facility on Earth. Her team had spent decades mapping alien economic networks, identifying key points where human interference could cause maximum disruption. Cut off the Merloth trade routes, she ordered. Make sure they're aquatic cities. Start running short of the rare minerals they need for their technology. The Merloth had tried to remain neutral, but humans made neutrality impossible. When alien species traded with Zephyrians or Vectari, they found their shipments mysteriously delayed or lost. Human hackers infiltrated alien banks and made currency exchanges unreliable. Current rider Belaneus of the Merloth sent increasingly desperate messages to both sides. This madness must end, the aquatic being pleaded. Your war is destroying the economic foundation of the entire galaxy. Innocent species are suffering because of your conflict, but humanity was no longer interested in innocent bystanders. Every species that hadn't actively supported humans was now considered a potential enemy. The galaxy had watched Jake Morrison get attacked and done nothing. Now, they would pay the price for their indifference. The first major battle between humans and Vectari took place in the Sigma Draconis system. The crystal aliens brought their most powerful ships, expecting to intimidate humans into surrender through sheer technological superiority. Captain Tony Rivera led the human assault with a fleet of modified cargo ships that looked almost defenseless. The Vectari laughed at what they saw as human desperation. They send merchant vessels against our battle cruisers, Crystal Singer Velmoth observed. This will be over in minutes. But the cargo ships were carrying experimental sound projection systems designed specifically to exploit Vectari weaknesses. When they got close enough to the alien fleet, they began broadcasting precise harmonic frequencies. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Vectari ships began to shake themselves apart as their own crystal hulls resonated with the human sound weapons. Perfect crystalline structures developed microscopic cracks that spread rapidly until entire vessels shattered like glass. Impossible! Velmoth screamed as his flagship began to vibrate. Our hulls are indestructible. Not if you know the right frequency. Tony replied over the open communication channel. His voice was calm and professional, which somehow made it more terrifying than any threat. Within 2 hours, the mighty Vectari fleet was reduced to glittering debris floating in space. The few surviving ships fled in panic, broadcasting warnings about human weapons that turned crystal strength into fatal weakness. But humans weren't finished with their lessons. General Marcus Thompson coordinated ground campaigns with a ruthlessness that shocked neutral observers. Human soldiers didn't just win battles. They made sure their victories sent clear messages to anyone watching. On the Zephyrian colony world of Hive 7, Marcus led an assault that lasted exactly 1 hour. His troops disabled every piece of military equipment on the planet without killing a single civilian. Then they left everything intact but completely unusable. "Your weapons still work," Marcus announced to the surviving Zephyrian commanders. "You just can't figure out how to operate them anymore. Maybe next time you'll think twice before attacking diplomats." The psychological impact was devastating. Zephyrian warriors found their own technology turned against them in ways they couldn't understand. Their strict hierarchy made it impossible to adapt quickly enough to counter human innovation. Other alien species began to panic. If humans could defeat both the Zephyrians and the Vectari, who was safe? Emergency sessions were called in government chambers across the galaxy as species tried to decide whether to fight or surrender. The ancient ethereal ones finally broke their silence. These energy beings had existed for millions of years, watching the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They rarely interfered in galactic politics, but the human war had caught their attention. Elder Void Walker Kethmarin materialized in the galactic council chambers, causing every present species to fall silent with awe and terror. "In all our eons of existence," the ancient being said, "we have observed many species transform from peaceful to warlike. But never have we witnessed beings channel grief into such precise, calculated fury." The ethereal continued, its voice echoing in dimensions beyond normal hearing. "You have awakened something in humanity that should have remained dormant. Their capacity for both compassion and destruction exists in perfect balance. When you attack their diplomat, you shatter that balance." The alien delegates listened in growing horror as the ancient being explained what they had unleashed. Humans do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for principles that transcend individual survival. Every attack against them becomes an attack against their entire concept of civilization. You have not declared war on a species. You have declared war on an idea. Admiral Kevin Brooks received reports of alien panic with grim satisfaction. His fleet now controlled 17 star systems that had previously been hostile to humanity. But victory was not bringing him any joy. "They still don't understand," he told his staff during a strategic meeting. "They think this is about military superiority or territorial expansion. They have no idea what we're really fighting for." Dr. Amy Chun, now serving as a military psychologist, nodded in agreement. "We're fighting for the right to exist as equals in this galaxy. For 50 years, we've been treated as amusing curiosities or useful servants. No more." The war had changed every human involved. Diplomats became strategists. Scientists became weapons designers. Traders became spies. The galaxy had pushed humanity too far, and now they were seeing what humans were capable of when they stopped trying to be liked. Jake Morrison stood in his new office, overlooking the rebuilt Kepler station. His scarred face reflected in the window as he watched alien ships arriving under heavy human escort. The same species that had ignored his attack were now desperately seeking peace negotiations. "Sir," his aide reported, "the Altarian ambassador is requesting an emergency meeting. They want to discuss terms for their surrender." Jake smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Tell them I'll see them when I'm ready. They can wait." The young diplomat who had believed in peaceful coexistence was gone forever. In his place stood someone who understood that respect wasn't earned through kindness alone. Sometimes it had to be demanded through strength. The galaxy was learning that lesson the hard way, one defeated fleet at a time. 2 years after the attack at Kepler Station, the galaxy looked completely different. The Zephyrian collective had collapsed, their rigid hierarchy crumbling under the weight of constant defeats. The surviving Hive commanders spent their days trying to understand how they had lost the creatures they considered inferior insects. The Vectari had retreated to their home systems, their crystal cities silent and dark. Their perfect technology had proven useless against human creativity and adaptability. Crystal Singer Velmoth had died when his flagship shattered around him, still refusing to believe that mammals could defeat crystalline perfection. President Maria Santos walked into the Galactic Senate chamber for the first time in her presidency, but she wasn't there to request anything or ask for permission. The dynamic had shifted completely. Now the galaxy waited to hear what terms humanity would accept for peace. Every seat in the massive chamber was filled. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in nervous silence as the human president took her place at the central podium. Many had never seen a human in person before. They were surprised by how ordinary she looked until they met her eyes. Members of the Galactic Senate, Maria began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. 2 years ago, one of your member species attacked a human diplomat for the crime of asking for fair treatment. Today, I'm here to explain what that attack has cost you. The silence was absolute. Even the usually chattering Bektar merchants sat perfectly still. The Zephyrian Collective no longer exists as a military power. Their fleet has been destroyed, their colonies occupied, and their government dissolved. The Vektari have learned that technological superiority means nothing without the wisdom to use it properly. Several other species have discovered that supporting our enemies was a costly mistake. She paused, letting her words sink in. But this war was never about conquest or revenge. It was about respect. For 50 years, humanity tried to earn a place in galactic civilization through diplomacy, trade, and cooperation. We were rewarded with condescension, exploitation, and ultimately violence. Maria's voice remained calm, but every alien in the chamber could feel the steel beneath her words. That ends today. Humanity will no longer ask for respect. We will demand it, and we will enforce that demand with whatever means necessary. Jake Morrison entered the chamber as she spoke. His scarred face was known throughout the galaxy now, a symbol of both human vulnerability and human determination. He carried himself with quiet authority that made even the largest alien delegate step aside as he passed. The young diplomat who had believed in peaceful coexistence was gone. In his place stood humanity's chief negotiator, a man who had learned that some lessons could only be taught through strength. Jake took his position beside President Santos and looked out at the assembled aliens. Many of them had watched the attack on him 2 years ago and done nothing. Now they waited nervously to learn their fate. The new galactic order will be based on equality, Jake announced. Every species will be treated with respect, regardless of their size, strength, or technology. Those who cannot accept this principle will find themselves excluded from civilized society. Admiral Kevin Brooks commanded the human fleet that now patrolled most of the galaxy's major trade routes. His ships didn't occupy alien worlds because they didn't need to. The mere knowledge that humans could appear anywhere at any time, with weapons that could turn any species' strengths into weaknesses, was enough to maintain order. The human fleet had grown to over 2,000 ships, many of them built using technology captured from defeated enemies. But it wasn't the size of the fleet that intimidated alien species. It was the reputation that came with it. Human commanders had proven that they could outthink, outmaneuver, and defeat any opponent through sheer creativity and adaptability. They fought with a combination of compassion and ruthlessness that no alien species could understand or counter. Captain Ryan Mitchell was back aboard the UHS Discovery, but his mission had changed completely. Instead of studying alien life forms, he now led diplomatic missions to species that were desperate to avoid humanity's wrath. Captain, reported Dr. Amy Chun, who had returned to her role as xenobiologist, but now also served as a cultural advisor. The Feklar delegation is requesting permission to establish formal diplomatic relations.